listen, but difficult to do. But that's our mission. We are into HR technology and digitalization. That's one area. Leadership and talent development we are into. And then we are into HR consulting and advisory services into different areas, whether it's a process, employee relations, or strategic HR. Then we do a little bit of selective basis outsourcing. Employee well-being has been a very big area for us for about a decade. And D&I is a part of HR, but D&I is another area that we focus on. We work with Nupur quite a bit on that area, besides many other prestigious clients. So just a brief introduction. Straight into the topic, right? So Nupur, let me start with you. The reason we are putting up this topic, we have put up this topic here is because we are hearing few stories around when people have started coming back to work, right? And we are listening to getting back to work, and then hybrid working. So we are hearing some, stories and some trends that, things have started going up because now people are physically available at the office, and we are seeing the cases of harassment going up. But I want to hear from you. Are in the industry, and you are observing this. What do you think are the trends nowadays, especially in the current context?
So if I share my experience vis-a-vis especially the last 2 years, where our COVID period was there, and now the post-COVID era, where we have resumed office. The cases are primarily more with seeking support, seeking a way of life, a better way of life, because it was a new learning for all when we went to work from home, and now that we are resuming back, both of it is a first of its kind experience we are facing as an organization and as an individual too. So the issues primarily are not more with POSH, but the issues primarily erupt when the listening is less. Because when the listening is more, when the empathy is more, what happens? Small things gets resolved in the but stage, and that helps. Organizations where the BCP has taken this part at the beginning of COVID and now again post-COVID, such scenarios would be lesser. But where there is an ambiguity, you may see a rise, you may feel a rise, wherein it is not a rise. And if I speak specifically to, I am from Bajaj Allianz Life. It's a life insurance organization. We are a people-driven sales organization. And interestingly, before COVID, we never understood what is work from home policy. We never understood that insurance can be sold from home. We never understood that concept. So as an HR or as a people agenda, we never had this policy. But within the organization, if I contextualize, the numbers have not gone high in POSH. Reason? As a BCP unit, we have done certain measures. So my first take is POSH as a subject has not gone high, but maybe more listening, more hand-holding, where it has gone high, that could have helped.
All right. So I'm sure, thanks for that opening note remarks, Nupur. And I believe because when you work remotely, sometimes there are some technical and the communication barriers that come in between. You don't feel as comfortable picking up the phone and talking to someone as, if you meet someone across in the corridor and then you start sharing what you're feeling, etc. I'm sure with the greater presence at office, this listening would go up, and then employees will feel a little more, supported and heard in terms of what their emotions issues are. So Belinda, on this, I want to hear from you. What are you seeing and listening to? What are the trends? Because I'm hearing, let me tell you honestly, with few clients and few organizations globally, I'm seeing when people have started coming back to office, we are seeing an upward trend on harassment, sexual harassment in particular, and harassment overall, but especially sexual harassment, and also unfortunately coming from the supervisors and the managers themselves, actually. So I'm seeing that trend in certain cases. But Belinda wants to listen from you. You're leading a global organization. What are you listening to? What are you hearing?
Okay. Thank you, Sanjeev. Very good question, because I come from a scientific world. So basically it's on the life sciences part of it. So I've got a vast range of employees portfolio. So be it from a scientist to a foreman. So the definition of sexual harassment has changed, right? And now people are more keen in understanding whether their dignity is being compromised at workplace. Now they have access to internet. Probably the pandemic has given them more insights to the law. It's not that the law has changed, but then the way they see the law has changed. The way they read the definition has changed. And that's why we have an increased number of cases, and our workspace is also increased, right? The definition of workspace, etc., is increased. It's no longer that you have to be physically present in order to harass someone. Even a small word could, which was okay pre-pandemic, is not okay post-pandemic, and it's purely dependent on the individual who's perceiving the message, right? So that is the reason why we see more and more of cases that's been reported. And I would agree to what Nupur says, like, the way it's been responded to, the first response is very, very important to the complainant. So that's why we are seeing a more intake of, I wouldn't call it as sexual harassment from my company per se, but whatever I've been hearing from the industry, yes, there is more that's coming. The way they've been treated, is it kind of because of a particular race they belong to, or gender, they belong to a particular gender because of which there is a discrimination that's been happening.
Okay, thank you very much. Sushil, coming over to you. There's a lot of discussion. I mean, these two ladies mentioned about workplace few times, right? And everyone is confused about what is a workplace today, right? And is where I'm working from, that's the only place I have. Is that the workplace? And the law is, I don't know. I mean, you are an expert on the legal dimensions of this. Want to hear from you and unpack for us and make it easy. What is this workplace and this confusion about if you are at home, it will be not considered as workplace, or how do we solve it? Because it's an issue for all the HR leaders and the business leaders also. So can you help us?
So thanks. I think I heard a lot of questions and ambiguity around. So I'll take a little legal side of it.
Yeah.
There hasn't been any ambiguity around what the workplace means. It's our perception where we are saying it's office or as a place where somebody is working around. Because work from home was never considered, it was just an add-on. The law very clearly says any place where employee is supposed to be for work is a workplace. Now, earlier, the anticipated definition was at home, you are not supposed to work. Right? Now, the mandate through the legislative
at
body.
Home, let me correct you. At home, you are supposed to work, but not for office.
Yeah, so that's it. So work related. So here, workplace is very specific organizational workplaces.
Okay.
So in the earlier time, the work from home or something was voluntary in nature. But now with this new pandemic, and there's a directive under the disaster management guidelines that people has to work from home and can't come back to their normal workplaces, the home, any place, chair, place, cafe day becomes their workplace. And that creates a little confusion in the mind of or from a responsibility of an employer, because on those places, employer who's supposed to safeguard the interest of the employee has no control. Right? Somebody going and sitting in a cafe and trying to work around because they got a better data system, and experience is something which is untoward and unwanted. I mean, now there's an ambiguity. Is it a workplace or not? So I think the facts of the case, situation will determine this. But from conceptually, any place where employee is supposed to be for work, okay, directed by the organization, saying this is what you had. So under instructions of the organization, right? That becomes a workplace. Voluntarily, if I chose to be on banyan tree and work, may not be my workplace. So I
So
think
just
that's
a,
the little distinction.
so let me take it forward. Just a situation, there are two people in the sales organization, right? Company XYZ, right? And they're in the field and they happen to go to barista cafe coffee day, right? For discussion, right? Let's stop over. And there the two colleagues, male colleague and female colleague, the male colleague harasses the female colleague, right? Undesired behavior. Will it be considered under the POSH? Yes or no?
Absolutely, because both of them were still on their duty, discharging their official duty.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And because they were discharging their official duty and are on doing what the work they're trying to do, okay, that place will be considered as a workplace for the purpose of the purview of IC or the legislation.
Correct. It's an interesting topic and maybe it'll help a lot of clarifying these things to a lot of us. Anything, Belinda or Nupur, you want to add to what Sushila said?
I'll just add to Sushil. When we do a party from office, instead of doing work outside, suppose I go for a party from office, whatever party, that is also a workplace. So workplace, as Sushil has defined in the beginning, is a very simple definition. Any place where we have joined with reference to work or invited from the organization, whether it's a party or a picnic or work, anything, whether it is day or night, whether it's a travel, all of it is workplace. So that's a simple definition we have, which is the responsibility of the organization. And that's the reason we do a lot of awareness, we do a lot of roadshows, we do a lot of XYZ interventions in terms of making people understand. But everything comes under the hemisphere of work.
Thank you. I think this was important topic and we got ample clarity. Belinda, unless you want to add on anything additional.
I just wanted to add up, there's a small question saying what happens if the employee has to manage 24/7 and the emails. First of all, none of us is expected to be on 24/7. It is against law. Okay, so let's get that right, because we have our duty hours. You may be assigned an extra on call, right? Which is very, very different than choosing our own, volition, saying I will access the mails around. So that's something we must understand. But if a situation you are an on call in some of the places where you have the support and you are assigned that this is the number, if it is required at 12 o'clock, you will manage this call. That period when you were on call, whether at home or something, will be a workplace. However, let me just add up this. You are working at home and you are harassed by your family member or your spouse at home. Is it employer's liability? I am doing my mail. I am doing right now, doing this work of managing this webinar, and I get harassed by my family members here. Is my organization responsible? I mean, very technical question, but the way you have to look at the legislation progressively, that's where the distinction will come. And that's why we are saying you can't only see the law. Law is always seen in conjunction with this context and the circumstances, and these two combined together tell you what workplace is and what workplace is not.
Great. And thank you very much for further expanding on that. And Asan had a comment here, which is very true. Sometimes, you don't know whether if there is an increase in the number, is it a good thing or a bad thing, right? We are working for an organization. They said, Sanjeev, we don't hear anything. There is no complaint, there is no news, there is no talk about POSH. So I don't know whether it is all healthy or people are not reporting, right? So sometimes, what is your view, Belinda? Sometimes, how would as an ER leader, if there's a rise in the number, you feel happy that people are reporting, or you feel, oh, there are more cases of harassment, right? It's a tricky situation for you. So
definitely it is kind of tricky. One is, it is about the trust that the organization builds with the employee, that they are able to report it out to you instead of walking up to, a third party and reporting it out. So it also creates a lot of liability on the employers to ensure that they are being given that confidence in order to report it. And that's been addressed timely. The more you address it timely, the more and more cases that you get. And I've seen that in my career. So it gives you, you are trying to do the right thing by addressing those problems. So definitely, if you ask me whether it's very happy, you're very happy that there are more cases that's getting reported or more harassment that's happening.
Yeah.
It is a thin line to note that while this has been happening and you don't have control over what has been happening, you can only proactively educate people, but you are also happy that you get to know that things are happening and it's been reported out to you. So, so you can become more and more proactive in, educating people, coaching people, and sending out strong messages that your company is non-tolerant towards certain behaviors. That is something that, I do in my day-to-day job. What I also do is we kind of, explain to people what is a virtual workspace, because right now, Sanjeev, it's, last 2 years or 2.5 years, and in our times as well, there were a lot of work from homes, right? So people just don't confine to the working hours. There have been cases that's been reported where they, in the capacity of them being colleagues with each other, they kind of connect, and there is certain things that happens between them, and they kind of report it out. Now, it is a case-to-case situation, and you have to deal with it in a case-to-case.
Yeah, I understand.
Depending on the situation, severity, what circumstances, who are the evidences, and you got to treat every case that comes to you
as unique
and in the light of the complainant, how the complainant actually sees it, what's the impact on it, on the complainant, and not what others perceive that. Probably my threshold levels could be a little higher and their threshold levels could be lower. So you got to really respect that feeling that they have.
Absolutely. I take that point, which I really noted. Every case is unique. Don't treat that, oh, this must be one of those cases kind of thing, and dismiss or presume that this would be the case situation. Nupur, coming to you, again on this, in your boardroom, when people you report number of POSH cases coming, and how is it seen in your organization, in your own view as a leader? You feel good that, oh, more people are reporting, or you feel, no, I think we are having more harassment cases? How do you react to that?
So actually, proactively, this act has come a couple of years back. And before that, it was not mandate as for every organization to have an IC committee and to do it in a structured way. But I'm happy to say that at Bajaj Allianz, where I work, I'm really proud of. Organization is 21 years old. The IC committee age is also 21 years old. Wow. It formed with the inception of the organization, with the Vishakha guidelines. So organization was ruthless and very, very clear that this is not tolerable. So as Belinda rightly said, we have a lot of top-down messaging right from the CEO, board members, MANCOM members, etc. Where it is very clear that such topic is not acceptable. At the same time, just to ensure that we don't create two segments in the country, that is, one is women and other is men. In our organization, we built it as a gender neutral policy. Means any sort of a POSH harassment has an inquiry process as per the Act. It is not mandate for men as per Act. As per Act, it is only for women, to safeguard women across every industry. In our organization, it is to both. So when we speak of awareness, either an induction or a orientation or a quiz or whatever, the essence is that this is not acceptable. It is applicable to both genders. The process we follow internally to the organization is as per the Act, the same process for both my men and women. And also for any false complaint, the actions are as ruthless as the true complaint, So there is an ecosystem which we have built in, saying that this subject has to handle more sensitively. And as Belinda rightly said, every case is unique. So as IC members, we keep learning. And first thing as IC learns is the trigger of a complaint. Why did it appear? There may be a scenario of incidents, but every incident is unique because the trigger is different, right? And the trigger, we analyze more, deep dive more to find out whether it is a conscious attempt, it is an unconscious attempt, it is because of something else that this has cropped up. So we try to go in depth, and then we co-create the awareness sessions in that session.
All right.
So that employees understand the essence of the really don'ts or do's unconsciously also. Because see, our society has its own norms, okay? We all come from a variety of diverse backgrounds, okay? So some things for somebody or some culture could be unconsciously done. So we learned all of those, and instead of just putting a directive, which is absolutely there, we also co-create and learn from these instances, and then co-create the education plan with our employees so that employees understand, and there's a symbiotic environment to respect each other.
So there is a, thank you so much for, making it clear to us. And there's a lot of comments going on in the chat. Thank you for your participation. So one, I'll pick up interesting, the gender neutral policy, because we just finished, completed our Pride Month, right? So companies are becoming very progressive in terms of being inclusive. It's not only gender, it's about LGBT, right? So there are comments which you covered very well that, while the law doesn't covers only for women employees, right? The harassment for women employees, but the companies have gone beyond, right? And they made their policies and the procedures gender neutral, right? So Belinda, coming to you in particular, what are you seeing the trends that companies adopt, whether in your organization or otherwise, to make it real gender neutral in real sense, not just a lip service, but in real sense? And especially, there are some interesting comment. What happens if the sexual harassment is from the same gender, right? From a women to women, from men to men. So would you like to throw some light on that in a very crisp manner, because we have quite a few questions to cover?
Sure. So in my career, I have seen same gender harassment as well. That's been reported. While as per the Act, we need to follow the IC and the rules of the Act in order to do a complaint from an women against man. But whereas, generally all the companies, what they do is they have an investigation policy, they have a procedure, which is like a lower court that's been followed, and you kind of cover all the important aspects of an investigation, be it whichever gender they belong to. And if it's within the same gender or against different genders, then that's been covered. And it is the judgment, or what you can say, I wouldn't call it the judgment, the team who's responsible for the final decision do not see it specifically on one gender versus against. They don't make any judgment on the employee's individuality or the character. That is something that's been framed into them, saying that when you come for the board, you are supposed to be seeing them as an employee, and you cannot be making any kind of assumptions about them. So that's the first stage that they've been, coached on and they've brought in. So we do have those kind of things, and it very clearly, all the companies are encouraging more and more, cases to be reported, and across whichever gender, be it, in any kind of gender that.
Good to hear that. Very interesting. Sushil, I want to ask you one thing.
Yeah.
Why don't you make the comment? Then I'll ask you. Maybe you are answering the question that I had in my mind, possibly.
So I think let me just get a little concept right. This is how, unfortunately, the way the Act is worded. It's a very badly worded Act from a heading perspective. Number one, Act or the law does not speaks about the gender of the accused. Okay, it's only protecting the woman from sexual harassment from anybody, from any gender. So it's not that it has to be men or a transgender harassing a woman. The law does not differentiate that. It's a special law created to protect, and the reality of life is the harassment is happening more for a feminine gender, if I'm not using the word woman here. Okay, so the Act does provide this opportunity for the same gender, for a different gender, doesn't matter, as long as it's a woman who's harassed, it is covered under the law. That's number one. A lot of people have a confusion around. It is not that the men's harassment is not covered. The law also provides the same laws that the sexual harassment of other gender specifically is considered as men, right, to be covered as the disciplinary issue, and it has to be part of your disciplinary procedure. Only the mechanism of investigation is different. For the harassment investigation, you have this IC. For the men or any other gender, you have a normal disciplinary procedure. Okay, so that's something we must understand. A lot of men feel, "Arey, mera kya hoga?" Don't worry. Majority of organizations have already, as everybody is saying, and I know we work with lot of progressive organization. And my first policy which I drafted on the sexual harassment was in 2001, in fact, which is very specifically prevention of sexual harassment. And I have been running this since 1994, guaranteed fair treatment policy. But investigations are different because of the context of the situations are different. Men are equally protected against any harassment. That's the legal position today. But we encourage every organization for ease of comfort and communication to have gender neutral policy, which helps you. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I think you answered half of the question that I was about to ask you. So you anticipated, right? But what I want to check with you, because you are a legal expert on this subject, right? Besides these two ladies, do you see in foreseeable future some changes to happen
Definitely.
in the law? And what would those be if you were to, for example, if I ask you, if you have to amend the law, what you think will be a couple of changes you would make?
Of changes. I think even if it's a spatial law, it should give you a little preview. I'm not sure whether it is part of the next question. And the next question, which is, can the transgender, right, approach an IC and saying, I have been sexually harassed? And IC says, yes, I can, yes, we can take. And respondent says that gender is not woman. So it is out of your purview legally, if your policy is not gender neutral from a law perspective. So I think that spatial provisions where you have this lacuna, the work from home has created a different kind of boundaries here. So like the Maternity Benefit Act has included work from home into the situation, should embed this situation. I think some of this, in fact, I would recommend, while this policy is very neutral, but if you guys are really interested, is just drop in your email ID to on the chat itself. I'll share with you 2020's Calcutta High Court judgment. I think it's a judgment must read, which is very clearly defined and saying, okay, I understand there is a balance there and we must protect the woman, but you must also protect the accused. Okay, and remember, any person we terminate out for harassment of a woman has so much of a stigma lifelong. Nobody talks to the family, the children. That's a huge impact, and it's a blot you can't remove.
I know.
Okay,
so I absolutely right.
So let me just take one more line change. Another change which I would think will happen is this media trial. You're not supposed to share the name, but you are required to file a police complaint. The minute you file a police complaint, it becomes a public knowledge, and that's why every day you see in the newspaper that fellow is tagged for this account, that fellow is tagged for this account. I think this anomaly will close in the next amendment.
All right. Any thing you want to add, Nupur, Belinda, to this?
So I would just like to add a different angle to it. Those of our audience here are IC members and leaders in the organization. The police, whenever such a case of POSH is complained to the police, the first thing they seek from the organization is the IC report. So it is very, very important that the IC, actually the IC is like a civil court. So it is very important that the members of IC are, trained or have orientation refreshers year on year, This is also a requirement as per law, but more than the law, even to the spirit, since my IC is like a court, so my IC should be very mature, to be unbiased, without a perspective, without being part of any department, without looking at the employee, whether complainant or respondent, to be a high performer or low performer, not having too much study about the people, but to study the depth of the case is very important. So my IC's way of working is very key, and bodies like police and the other bodies externally where you can go, they would really look for the IC report first. I was reading a chat with one of our colleagues here who has asked a question that what happens if my employee is asked not to raise a complaint? If the employee is stopped from raising a complaint, it is detrimental to the organization also as a brand and as a culture, because for example, if you stop me from complaining in this organization, I can leave the organization and still go ahead with the complaint. And then the question of the organization's ownership also comes in terms of what was their responsibility when the person or the employee was in the system. So, it is a double-edged coin. It's a very sensitive issue. It's not to be under the carpet. And secondly, it cannot be a bottoms-up approach. Few of us cannot start doing things in the organization. It has to be a top-down driven communication and culture. And the more people speak, the better, because you are doing the proactive actions within the organization instead of the external world coming and doing the actioning for the organization. So
Perfect.
on both the sides, doing it proactively always helps, because it's like home. Suppose we consider our homes. Any problem in the home, it is best sorted in home, not by the neighbor. So similarly to the organization. So if we can build a culture where we can ask people to speak up, to share in confidence, to give some escalation metrics, anything which works in the organization to build trust, that is the easiest part of solving a problem.
Correct. So, Belinda,
Sandeep, just to add on to whatever Nupur said, if you don't mind.
Sure, go ahead.
I think it is important to change the mindset of the leaders. They'll have to be on the growth mindset instead of having a conservative mindset, and especially the IC team. They have to be really mature enough to come with a neutral mindset. They should not be sided towards either their performance or the level of the employee, whichever level. And you cannot categorize this because they come from a particular, you can't. First of all, you should not be guessing them based on a community or any kind of, from which background they're coming from. You can't say that, okay, the person is coming from so-and-so state and make a generalized statement on it. I think that is the first level of training that the IC team should be given, whereby they should not have any kind of reservation on the, whoever the complainants are. It could be men or women, and take it at the face value. The second thing is we need to follow the principle of natural justice, be it the act or not. I think when you follow that, and if we are humanitarian, if we are following the humanitarian grounds and always put ourselves into that shoes and see how would we feel if we had been treated the same way, that'll help, and that'll help the leaders as well. And this is what, most of the time we do. We kind of question saying that always put yourself into the shoe and see whether you are reasonable to the other party or not. That really helps us to take the right steps and, coach the employees and the ICs, especially the managers and the ICs. So it has helped us.
Correct. Thank you very much. So let me ask you a very different question now. Many of us work in global organizations, right? Where earlier there was a law made for India, within India, physical presence, people at the workspace was defined. Today, the boundaries are hazy, right? And we work in international situation, global clients, different countries, maybe from the client side or our own organization, right? How do you deal with a situation where the accused, maybe if I say, right, the complaint is against someone who is not within India, right, from some different countries, right, and you're part of the same organizations. How do you tackle with that? Can you help us with that?
Yeah. So I've seen cases like that to
Okay,
start with.
so want to hear from you. How do you handle it?
So basically, the law of the land applies, okay, and and it is in conjunction with your code of conduct, if you say, for the organization, the culture of the organization, the guidelines that's been set out by the organization. So the respondents, sometimes if the respondent belongs to a particular country whereby it's very kind of stringent for you to follow certain norms, you have to follow the law of that particular land in order to request any witness interviews and stuff like that. But we do coordinate with the other HR, country HR, and the IC members or certain. And I can tell you then, in at least in APJ, where I kind of handle, most are POSH Act, and the acts that is available in certain other countries are pretty much similar. There are minor differences, but it's kind of pretty much similar. There, the act is more in depth, where it says very clearly that we need to follow the principle of natural justice and everything else. But it's kind of similar in most of the APJ organizations. So it kind of becomes easy for you to, interview that person, get a support person if required, along with the respondent, and then interview that, take the notes, etc., and get signed off. So,
very, very complicated, actually.
Yes,
So
it
just
becomes complicated.
Just like Interpol, right? They have to deal
Yeah.
with the laws of different countries. Like IC is also becoming international in terms of understanding the nuances. And I think as we go into the global organizations, more and more such nuances would come, isn't it? And then issues. So Sheila, I want to check with you with this hybrid working, remote working. Now, earlier when this investigation happens, IC investigation, right? Committee investigating, people will come face to face because of sensitivity and confidentiality, many, many reasons, right? What is the scenario today? What is the legal stand on? Can IC members insist on both the parties to come in person, to come to office or someplace in person and do this? Or if one says, the respondent or the one of the respondents say, no, I can't come, I can do it only remotely. So how does IC decide in these situations, right? This is a very practical situation, I'm sure many of us must be facing.
Well, I think it's a pretty interesting question, and it has compounded today all the more than was in the past. Law does not mandate physical presence. The law says person should be present. Now, how present, visually present, physically present, is not defined in the law.
Okay.
Assumption, the backdrop was that when they are saying present, it's physically present because there was no remote working from a law context purpose. And we must also understand the law is not made for the global companies. There are some zillions of other organizations in this country who are not tech savvy. Okay, so we have to consider that rather than us who are more privileged in this area. So in the past also, this was a challenge. One Chennai person has a conversation on the phone with somebody in Delhi, and now Delhi investigation happening. You can't keep flying somebody from Chennai to Delhi because investigation is done by an IC at Delhi. Okay. So there were visual presence, and we had in our past conversation also, it's far more tricky in terms of how do you do, because it has its own challenges. How do you record it? Can you record it? Do you have a permission? And you don't even know, because it's not a formal, when you're conversing as an inquiry, you don't even know what the other person is recording. And your sentences are taken out of context, like Rahul Gandhi's statement, and pushed it into what media. So it's very, very difficult. More difficult, the situation today is, can an employee refuse? Can an IC force somebody to come present physically? Answer is yes, because it has a power of civil code. Okay. So that's one, to make a presence, to ask for a document and all that, it has the power of civil code. But is it viable? Probably no, because the IC itself must be doing the investigation sitting at home. Okay. It's a hybrid work. The challenge is slightly contra here. The challenge is you have a 90 days and one party, either complainant or the respondent. Normally complainant is always in a hurry, but respondent said, sorry, I'm operating from home. I can't have a video conference because I don't want my family to overhear what's happening. Please defer the inquiry. Or, so let's have the meeting in the office face to face. Complainant is sitting in probably for some distance place there. Bring the person here. Bring the witnesses here. So it's a huge nightmare for an IC members and the organization. There is no legal element to this, but that's a challenge today.
It's a challenge.
And as IC has to be, very empathetic about the complainant, I think the IC also be equally empathetic about the respondent, because at this stage is only an acquisition. You don't even know what the truth is. So you can't pass a judgment and treat this. So back to close your question around, I probably answered 2-3 questions here. IC has the power. IC can decide, okay, you can't do this here. Okay, I will give you a business center. Go there and do this from a business center, because technology, those modalities are possible, but IC has a bigger challenge of keeping the records and recording, untempered recording of these proceedings. Remember, the copy of the proceeding also needs to be provided to the person. So the copy of the recording has to go to both the parties.
Yeah.
And when this recording goes, right, there are so many conversations you will have in between. I mean, it's tough on IC today. Yeah.
So, Nupur, you have been into IC.
So,
go ahead if you want to make a remark
so
first.
A few good practices I'll share, which can
Sure.
help all of us. Is I'm talking of a case where it's a physical inquiry happening. You can create satellites in the country, because our India is very vast in terms of geography. And the IC travels to certain satellites. The employees, that is a respondent and complainant, they also travel to those satellite offices. So there are 2-3 positives here. A positive is when my IC is able to travel. Example, you have a zonal IC committee of north, south, east, west, central, etc. The problem solving becomes faster because of time investment. Point number 2, we need to keep the confidentiality of the complaint. So in our organization, we do not use the word accused. Yeah? Accused is absolutely the ulterior part of the law. So we use the word called complainant and respondent. Okay. And their confidentiality is as important as doing the inquiry. So we never do an inquiry in the base office of any of these employees or their chain of commands, because this is a very interesting gossip point to understand who are the witnesses, who's coming, who's going, all of that, to stop that to some extent. And point number 3, the travel arrangements are made by the organization in such a way that both of them do not travel by the same air flight, same train. They don't travel together. Maybe one comes earlier, one comes later. Both are in 2 different hotels in part of the city. They're not in the same place. So there is no need of confrontation, whether positively or negatively, by them. And in the letter, it is very clearly said that if you try to influence or if you try to disturb, then the case is against you. So that's very, very critical that they maintain confidentiality and they maintain safety of the other person, of not getting disturbed by any sort of a disturbance. We see a lot of Bollywood movies. We love to do a lot of tricks of disturbing the others. So all that is absolutely no. If it is found by the IC, the case is adjourned and the case is against that person who is doing the disturbance. So all this is there in the letter. So that helps. And a physical, those of us who are ICs here, you would agree with me, a physical inquiry is very powerful, because you see a lot of body language, you get a lot of signals which give you the triggers. The virtual part is very tricky. I would agree with Sushilji, because during lockdown, where we had to stay in home, we were not supposed to go to office, we're not supposed to travel as per the regulations. we have done the same thing. We have done it through MS Teams. And we have done it in that transparency. For example, in an inquiry, what happens? You first listen to the complainant, then you listen to the respondent one by one. Then you listen to both, and they cross-question both. And we do it for 2 days, giving back the transcript so that they can come the next day and ask more questions and all of that. So in the MS Teams mode, we do in the same fashion. MS Teams has a recording like how you're recording now. So you do the complainant, you do the recording, give it back to him and the respondent, do the respondent and give it back to both of them, and then do the cross. So they bring together the transcripts, and it is systemic. So transparency is maintained. What is difficult is for the IC, because as Sushilji rightly said, the other person can also do recording. Well, you put rules and regulation, but it is left to ambiguity. So that part, so what we do, what we have done in the past, couple of cases in COVID, we split the inquiry in couple of days, not a single day. When we did the physical, we had 48 hours only for this, no other job, and we close it in 48 hours. But when we did virtual, we split into 3 sessions, half day, because it's difficult to sit for the day also. And it's an inquiry is not easy for the employees, for the complainant and respondent. So we broke into 3 sessions, we make them prepared, and they come with all information. And IC also does a lot of homework.
Yes.
With the chain of information, and we could come, and so we could give a fair deal to both of them, whether it was virtual or a physical. So that was our satisfaction as an organization and IC, that to both of them, before they go back, we ask them the feedback. How did you find? Were you able to share your thoughts? Were you able to convey everything? We speak in vernacular so that English is not a barrier. Aap batao, and in IC, vernacular ICs we have, so they speak in the local language also, just to make sure
comfortable, because correct, because both are emotionally charged. Both are emotionally charged, respondent as well as the.
So that is the first job of the IC, which we should do in terms of building the trust that we are for both of them, and not for anyone.
So, Belinda, thank you very much. I think you shared some very good practices, practical, which are relevant in today's time. I'm sure all of us will benefit from what you have shared. I mean, from all of you, I think recently what you shared just now. Belinda, just a question to you. Normally, we say POSH is just like a power of a civil court, etc. Now, in civil court, if I file a complaint, right, there's a hearing, a judgment is passed, I get to know what judgment has been passed against the accused, right, in this case. Now, in case of POSH, sometimes it's not obligatory on part of the IC. In fact, as a recommended practice, they don't share what punishment has been given to the person in case found guilty, right? Isn't it? So do you have situation where the complainant wants to know, okay, I made a complaint, but I don't know what happened, right? And there's an ambiguity in their mind. People may get to know informally, but so what is the situation and how do you deal with that?
There has been situations like that, Sanjeev, where people come and say that, hey, I don't even know that you guys have taken action. Although we give the findings, we kind of state, this has been substantiated, not substantiated, etc. And we do not, to protect the dignity of the respondent, we do not mostly share, not only in sexual harassment cases,
any disciplinary
cases, because of the gossips that can happen in the office workspace and stuff like that. We speak to the complainant in detail, and we tell them that, listen, and this is one of the questions that we do ask, and I've asked in a couple of interviews, is that, what is your intention? What do you want to attain out of this? This is something that we do ask. While they report it, we will take into action, but we also want to know what their terms are, right? Basically. And we are very clear about whether it's monetary or non-monetary terms. There are people who come and say that, I want this kind of I've gone through so much of trauma that I want this monetary benefit out of it. Sorry, we do not entertain any monetary benefit. Or there has been people who've said, okay, fine, And it depends on the personality as well. Some people do come and say that, okay, give it for an orphanage or try to entertain. So we are not here to do something of that sort, which is not under our control. So we do explain what is an agreeable term whenever it's a conciliation and stuff like that. We kind of explain things to them. Even if they don't go for a conciliation and it's an investigation, we try to get a grasp of what is really happening there. What do they want? Do they want this to be addressed, or is there any other intent behind it? That's another thing that we look into.
All right. So while this very interesting discussion, and I think a lot of practical, useful guidance and insights we have got from all of you.
And then there are issues. What happens if the respondent submits a resignation? Okay.
Okay.
And I saw some of the responses saying, no, you hold the resignation and don't let the person go there. Now you can do that if it's a serious issue of principles around, and then you have to keep this person as suspended from the work, or you continue to pay the wages for no work for this person because the person is switched off. I mean, this is something because organization has a right up to a point to accept or extend because it puts in it's an internal inquiry. However, in majority of cases, ultimately what you are doing, the hardest punishment you can give this person is a termination.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So in any case, you want to cease the employment unless you are setting something, and this is not something which you will create and then make an announcement that I have done something. You can't make as an organization.
Correct. Good point. Good point.
So I think this is somewhere organization has to trade off and has to understand this, because the person will resign and say, I'm not coming. You don't have a police. All you can do is do an ex parte inquiry. Okay. And then take a decision, and whatever admin decision you want to take, you take. So I think from an administrative control perspective,
got it.
I think it's important for you to strike a balance. Yeah.
Good point. Thank you for that. So couple of announcements. One, just a brief announcement. As Enabling World, we do offer some services around POSH in case anyone is interested about e-learning, about managers awareness, IC members awareness, etc. So International Self-Care Day is also coming. As I mentioned, we do work in the well-being area. So we do offer certain programs on self-care. And if Vijaya or Kalyan can share the link of those programs, you can go to detail or reach out to us in case you are interested. I would also request Kalyan, if you can share the poll. I want to hear from you while I'm thanking the panelists for their great insights. I want to know from you whether this session was useful. So there'll be a poll which will be there on your screen. Give you a very candid feedback of how it was useful to you, and so that we can then do better the next time. So with that, we come to a close of the session. I promised we'll be at time, so it's close to 4. But I want to thank Nupur, to you, Belinda and Sushil, for great insights, very practical and real in today's time, right? And it was not general guidance, right? I mean, so what you have covered, I'm sure all of us will benefit from that and create a better, safe place where our colleagues, everyone, irrespective of the gender, feel very comfortable. They can be themselves. They can be themselves at the workplace. That's the best thing, the minimum that we can do to our employee colleagues. So with that, I would thank you very much for the audience. Amazing interaction and insights. I mean, a parallel session was going on in the chat, I can say. But thank you very much, audience, for your engagement and queries and remarks on this. With that, I wish you all a very safe stay. And let's talk again, maybe a few weeks down the line on another interesting topic. Bye-bye till that time.
Thank you.
You've been very good. And thanks to all the panelists, Nupur, Sushil, Belinda. You are a great host and anchor, I'll say.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks.
I saw you in action. And Sushil, you have been very incisive and very insightful, like a lawyer. And Nupur and Belinda have been very, very.
I just try to play my role of the
No, you have
side.
impressed me. Next
Thank you
time
very
I need
much,
a lawyer.
sir. Absolutely. I'm not a professional liar, but I can give you enough insights.
I thought you said
on
liar.
this area.
L-I-A.
Thank you very much, and feel free to connect with us anytime.